Hello and welcome to this instructional video on how to use the Emcor Hiring Manager portal. Once you enter the username and password onto the login page and click on Login, this will take you into the main menu, which is where you can see all of your live vacancies. Using the filters option at the top, you can see other vacancies that you may have raised in the past, or you can filter for vacancies that are awaiting authorization. To create a new vacancy, simply click onto the Add Vacancy button at the top of the screen. And the next screen that you see will ask you the type of vacancy that you want to add. The first drop-down allows you to choose from a template of predefined vacancy descriptions. The second one asks for the job type, so you could be choosing permanent, fixed-term contract, temp or 0 hours. Depending on the option that you choose in here, you may or may not be asked for some salary information about the vacancy. There's also a reason for recruitment. I'm going to put some salary information in for the job that I'm going to raise. And click on Continue to go to the next screen. On this screen you can enter in more information about the vacancy that you're raising, such as the division that you're raising it for, so this will give you access to all the divisions that you are able to raise vacancies for. The number of positions that you want to raise the vacancy for. If your vacancy has more than one position on here, you can change this number on here. You can enter a salary budget, and these additional fields can be filled in. In the Hiring Team section, you'll notice that your own name will be selected as the hiring manager on the vacancy. If any of your other colleagues are responsible for this vacancy, then you can start typing in a name and add additional people to receive notifications and to be able to see the vacancy within their portal. You also need to select who's going to authorise your vacancy. Depending on the type of vacancy that you raise, it may require authorisation from an account director or contract manager, and possibly a group executive director too. Below this is the job description. All of this has been automatically filled in from the job template that I chose. And I can enter additional information and comments at the bottom of the screen. To save the vacancy, we have two options. We can either save as a draft, which will allow me to come back into this vacancy at a later stage and make additional changes to it before sending it out for authorisation. Or if I'm happy with the vacancies I've created, I can send for authorisation, which will automatically trigger an email to the first authoriser asking them to authorise the vacancy for me. The first authoriser will receive an email with a link to the vacancy, taking them to a screen such as this one, allowing them to see the details of the vacancy and to decide whether it should be approved or rejected. They can also add their own comment in to explain why they've approved or rejected that role. Clicking on Approve will trigger the next person to approve the vacancy in the line. If there are no other approvers to approve the vacancy, then this vacancy will go live. If I click back into the vacancies menu, I can see all of the vacancies that I have again. So here's my test vacancy. You'll notice that my test vacancy at the top here now has some candidates who have applied to it. So I can see the number of candidates who have applied on this right-hand column, and in this case we have 19 applicants for this vacancy. And the next part of my role would be to take these candidates through the workflow process for the role. If I wanted to work on a particular vacancy, I can click into it and then click on the Work on this Vacancy button at the top of the screen. This will now mean that everything I do on the portal relates to the vacancy that I'm working on. To stop working on a vacancy, I can also click on the X icon at the top of the screen. Now that I'm working on the vacancy, I can see on the left-hand side the figures relating to how many candidates are at each stage of the workflow. So I have 4 candidates here at line manager screening, and by clicking on that menu item, I can see the candidates who are at that stage. I can also drill down to see all of the candidates who are incomplete or complete in that stage. To affect the outcome of one of these candidates, I can go into the candidate by clicking on their name here. This will show me all the details of the candidate. I can download the candidate CV using the link here, or I can use the quick view to quickly look at the candidate CV. This will allow me to make a decision as to whether I want this candidate to go any further in the workflow process. Once I've made my decision, I can provide an outcome for the candidate, which would either be a proceed decision or a reject. Again, I can also add comments to back up why I am making that decision, and then click on update. And you'll notice that now that I've updated that candidate, it shows that this part of the workflow is complete. And it also allows us to drill down to show the different outcomes that I may have provided for candidates. The next stage after the line manager screening would be to have an interview arranged, which could be a telephone interview, first interview, or any of the others that you can see on the left-hand side here. So by going to telephone interview, I can see all of the candidates who I have scheduled for telephone interviews. I can also see the date and time that those interviews are going to happen. Once an interview has taken place, I can go into the candidate from this menu. And again, on the right-hand side, I can update the action, the outcome of the action, to tell the outcome of that interview. So whether to progress or to reject that candidate. This process continues for all the different stages of the workflow for all of our candidates who may be taken through to a first interview or a second interview. Once we get to an offer stage, there is another authorization process that happens at this stage. But we can see where candidates have got to in this authorization process. So we can see here we have a candidate who is at offer authorization 1. We also have a candidate who's at offer authorization 2 here. And once the candidates have been placed, we will also be able to see their details in the placements page. And in a candidate's placement, we'll be able to see additional information about placement, including the candidate's salary, when they're starting, etc. If you need to log out of the system, you can click on the log off button in the top left corner. You will automatically be logged out if you close your browser for a certain amount of time, but clicking on the log out button will ensure that you are out of the system before closing. This concludes today's tutorial.